Good evening, all of you. I'm here on the West Coast in the Palm Springs area, so it is a late afternoon tending towards evening here. But I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to join you and would like to thank the organizers from USJet AA for the invitation and the opportunity to talk a little bit on this subject of careers in the Foreign Service. And as I was introduced, I have just completed my 3-year assignment in Osaka, Japan, as the Consul-General for the Western Japan region. It was a great job, and I had a wonderful time working with colleagues like Catherine and Michael, and having the opportunity to represent the United States in Western Japan. As I have come back to the United States now, it's been a little over 2 weeks since I've been back from that assignment, and I'm doing the reverse cross-cultural adjustment to America. I have had a little bit of time to reflect on the most recently completed assignment. And so maybe I'll start by telling you a little bit about that job and work my way backwards to the Foreign Service in general. In Osaka, we cover Western Japan region, and that is if you know Japan at all, and I think as JET alumni you do, that is the Kinki, Shikoku, and Chugoku regions that are covered in that consular district, which is about 17 prefectures that the consulate is responsible for. As Consul General, I serve as the Chief Executive Officer, if you will, for the mission. And our mission included 15 American officers and about 40 local Japanese staff. And our job collectively was to represent the United States in the Western Japan region. We had about, I would say, 3 main missions. Was to promote economic and trade relations between the United States and Japan, to promote and advocate support for the strong security alliance that we have with the Japanese government through our militaries cooperating together, and then to also deepen our people-to-people relations between Americans and Japanese. And so how did we do that? We had a variety of activities and programs that supported our effort to do that. In the Western Japan region, as in Japan in general, the US-Japan relationship is really greatly appreciated by a wide swatch of the population. There are people who remember having studied in the United States, or having been exchange students in high school, or having traveled to the United States. And so the US relationship is a very positive one overall, and the people in general have a great support for the United States and for the relationship with Japan. Where we find that there are challenges is looking forward to the future. That great relationship and all those great memories were forged by the connections that were created through exchange programs and cultural events and tourism and travel. What we're finding is that the younger generation of Japanese are less inclined to have those kinds of experiences. And so one of the challenges is for us in across Japan, not only in our consulate, is to promote and advocate for firmer ties with the next generation, the successor generation, the next leadership generation of Japanese. And so educational exchanges are something that we talked a lot about through our public affairs office. we had lots of opportunities to bring academics from the United States to talk about their institutions and to talk about opportunities for study in the United States. But we also had opportunities to engage with professionals, young professionals, through our exchange programs like the International Visitor Leadership Program, which were short-term opportunities to travel to the United States to engage with professionals across a range of different topics and to understand better how the United States meets and addresses different issues. And so those programs continue, and I will let Michael talk perhaps about a little bit more about those kinds of programs. But as Consul General, my job was to manage all of the elements of the consulate and the American officers and the Japanese staff, and to give them the wherewithal to carry out this effort to promote better relations with Japan. We did a lot because Western Japan is historically a trade area, an area for commerce and trade in Japan. We did a lot in engaging with Japanese business. A lot through our American Chamber of Commerce, which has a chapter in Western Japan, to promote and support the business exchanges, not only American businesses coming to Japan, but also Japanese business interested in investing in the United States. We promote agricultural products from the United States into the Japanese market. So we had a U.S. Agricultural Trade Office, and through that office introduced people in Western Japan to American products that were being imported into their local supermarkets, and giving them the opportunity to understand that the United States is a reliable partner for agricultural and food products in the Japanese market. So there was no one day that I could say is a typical day in the life of a Consul General. I could be talking to a student group at a university and promoting study abroad, or I could be talking to a group of businessmen and promoting investment in the United States. I could be in a place like Kyoto and taking part in a cultural exchange, or I could be in the office writing up a lot of paperwork in preparation for visits by our ambassador and other senior officers from our embassy in Tokyo. And I think that's part of what I enjoyed the most about the job, was that one day was not like the other day, and there could be a lot of interesting activities on the horizon, whether they were business related or whether they were cultural related, or they involved the military installation in our consular district. It was a range of different activities that brought me in contact with different people. And I think looking back on my 3 years, of course, you can't complain when you work in an area that includes frequent visits to places like Kyoto or Hiroshima or Kobe. But I think that what was most memorable for me, and what will always be the most memorable part of the job, was the opportunity to engage with people. The opportunity to understand the challenges that people are confronting in Western Japan, where these small towns are being hollowed out because students who study in Tokyo find that they'd rather stay and live and work in Tokyo, and they're not returning to their home towns, and creating a drain, if you will, in the population, and how these local townships are worried about that and how they're worried about meeting that. Or we're having discussions about Japan's aging society and what will happen in the future, and how will Japan's economic opportunities continue when there is the most rapidly aging society in the world currently, and how can they do that? Is it by bringing in immigrant labor? And in a society like Japan, what are the implications socially for that? People are thinking about those kinds of things, and having the opportunity to be a part of those discussions was something that I really found educational and highly interesting. So over the 3 years that I served in the consulate in Osaka as the Consul-General, I had those opportunities to travel throughout the region, to have those meetings with local officials, with business leaders, with educators, to talk to artisans, including Americans who had come to Japan because they wanted to learn how to become potters, and wound up spending 40 years learning the intricacies of Bizen pottery in Okayama, for example, to journalists and to students. It was a very enriching experience, and it was a privilege to head that opportunity and to create for all of the American officers and the Japanese staff at the consulate the opportunities to deepen those relationships. The other thing that I would say about the Foreign Service is that there are all kinds of opportunities to fit in, if you will. A few fun facts I compiled for tonight take us way back in history. In 1777, fun fact, Morocco was the first nation that sought diplomatic relations with the United States. And Benjamin Franklin established the first overseas mission for the United States in Paris in 1779. In April of 1782, it was John Adams who was received by the Dutch Republic as they were the first country, together with Morocco and France, to recognize the United States as an independent government. The first overseas consulate for the United States was founded in 1790 in Liverpool in Great Britain, which I think of more now as the home of the Beatles. But the first American consulate in Japan was opened in a temple, Gyokusenji, in Shimoda, in Shizuoka Prefecture. And Townsend Harris was the American officer who headed that consulate, and who also headed the first legation, which is just a little bit under a full embassy, in 1959 in Tokyo. These early relations with the United States have continued, and in fact, the United States is the country with the most diplomatic presence around the world. We are in, I believe, 169 of the UN countries, and our embassies and consulates, I couldn't get an exact number, but let's just say it's a lot. I think around 300 or so around the world. A couple of other fun facts. The first woman in the Foreign Service was an officer by the name of Lucille Atcherson. She passed the diplomatic service examination in 1922 with the third highest score, thank you very much, and was assigned to Bern, Switzerland in 1929. She resigned her commission in 1927 in order to get married, which was State Department policy at that time. And that policy that women who married needed to resign from the Foreign Service. That continued until 1972, when the State Department lifted the policy as a result of a class action case that was brought by a Foreign Service officer, Allison Palmer. A woman by the name of Ruth Bryan Owen was the first woman to be the chief of a US diplomatic mission, and that mission was Iceland. And Helen Moore Anderson was the first woman to hold the rank of ambassador, and that was in Denmark in 1949. Frances Willis was the first female FSO, Foreign Service officer, to become an ambassador, and that was in 1953. Few other fun facts to throw at you. A gentleman by the name of Ebenezer Don Carlos Bassett was the first African-American diplomat. In 1949, Edward Dudley was the first African-American to hold the rank of ambassador. And a gentleman by the name of Clifton Wharton was the first African-American to join the Foreign Service and was also the first African-American appointed as a chief of a diplomatic mission to a European country. He was in Romania, appointed in 1958, and was also, after that, the chief of the diplomatic mission in Norway in 1961. It would be several years later that Patricia Roberts Harris, a political appointee, was the first African-American woman to hold the rank of ambassador, and she was the US ambassador to Luxembourg. I've noted these names of past Foreign Service officers and non-career appointees, particularly the women and African-Americans, because I believe that this is a very interesting time to be considering a career in the US diplomatic service. In the wake of the George Floyd murder in police custody in Minneapolis and all of the subsequent protests around the United States and indeed around the world, advocating for social justice and equality, we in the State Department and in our foreign affairs agencies in general are thinking about these issues of representation in our diplomatic service. And we're thinking specifically what initiatives we need to implement and to make a part of our culture organizationally, so that we can ensure that the American diplomats that we send to represent our country overseas, around the world, will truly reflect the diversity that we are living here in the United States. There are a number of areas in which, if you're thinking about a Foreign Service career, you can point yourself. There is information online in State Department careers that will talk about political reporting or economic reporting. As a Foreign Service generalist, you can also consider careers in our management field or in consular affairs, providing those services that were so important in this time of COVID-19. Our consular officers were really the unsung heroes and heroines in enabling American citizens around the world to be repatriated back to the United States as the COVID-19 outbreak progressed around the world and air travel shut down. A lot of our citizens abroad were stranded overseas. I mean, some of them were frankly stranded, and it was the work of these consular officers working as they do in support of American citizens abroad who were able to, through a variety of means, enable American citizens to repatriate and get home to the United States. Our public diplomacy officers are working in a variety of programs and projects that expand the understanding between foreign populace and the United States, and provide opportunities for these greater exchanges that promote greater understanding. And there are areas of specialty in the Foreign Service as well. And all of that information is available online and through the resources that you have here on this panel. So I won't go into all of the details about this, but I would just say that I have had a career that is now 30 plus years long in the Foreign Service. Every day hasn't been a party, but most of my time in the service has been extremely rewarding. It is quite an honor to represent the American government and to be a voice for the American people, working overseas and promoting better understanding between foreign publics and the United States government and American citizens. And so I would conclude by saying that it has been the honor of a lifetime to have had a career in the Foreign Service. Most of that career has been spent overseas, and most of that overseas part of my career has been spent in Japan. And so I'm a very big enthusiast on Japan service, but I'm an even bigger enthusiast on representing the United States and being a part of the diplomatic service. I am continually impressed with my colleagues and sometimes wonder, how did I get here? Because I would be hard pressed to find a smarter, more committed and patriotic group of people to be colleagues with. And I have greatly appreciated the opportunity to be one of their number in the diplomatic service. If you're thinking about becoming a diplomat, I say good on you. Keep thinking about it, ask questions, and do pursue that opportunity. It has been a gratifying career for me, and I believe that for some of you out there listening, it can be a gratifying experience for you as well. Thank you.